The desert planet stretched endlessly under the pale light of a distant sun. Jagged rock formations jutted from the sand like broken teeth, and the wind carried tiny grains that cut across the skin like fine sandpaper. Ethan had been traveling alone for days, his mining rover long since disabled by a malfunction in the power core. He had radioed the colony several times, but the storm interference scrambled his messages. Now he was stranded, his oxygen running dangerously low. Each breath felt heavier than the last, and his chest burned as he struggled to take another. Ethan stumbled across the dunes, his boots sinking into the hot, shifting sand. His vision blurred, and he leaned on a jagged rock to steady himself. The sun had dipped low, casting long, dark shadows across the landscape, and he realized with a pang of fear that he had no idea where he was. The colony's beacon was too far to reach, and the storm clouds above threatened to make the night even darker. He sank to the sand, feeling the cold bite of exhaustion creeping into his body. Suddenly, a flash of light caught his attention. At first, he thought it was a reflection off the rocks, but the light moved, hovering above the dunes like a small, glowing star. He rubbed his eyes, but it didn't disappear. As it drew closer, Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. The object descended slowly, and he realized it was a ship. Sleek, organic in shape, and unlike anything he had ever seen. Its surface shimmered like liquid silver, and it made no sound as it hovered just above the sand. A ramp extended from the ship, and a figure stepped forward. Ethan's jaw dropped. She was tall and slender, with skin that glowed faintly under the pale sunlight. Her eyes were large, reflective, and almost luminescent, like twin moons. Her hair flowed around her shoulders, moving as if caught in an invisible wind. There was something otherworldly about her, something both intimidating and beautiful. Ethan tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. He could only stare as the alien woman approached him. She moved with grace, each step deliberate and precise, yet her presence carried warmth and calm. She reached out and without a word placed a hand on his shoulder. The touch was gentle, almost soothing, and Ethan felt a strange sense of safety wash over him. "You're going to be all right," she said, her voice melodic, almost musical. He couldn't understand the words fully, but the meaning was clear. She gestured for him to stand, and despite his weakened state, he obeyed. She lifted him with ease, carrying him toward the ship, as if he weighed nothing at all. Inside, the ship was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. The walls shimmered like liquid metal, and panels of light floated in the air without any visible support. The atmosphere was calm, cool, and clean, and he immediately felt his strength returning slightly. The alien woman placed him on a soft surface, and he sank into it gratefully. She moved around him with purpose, her hands scanning his body and the instruments around her flashing softly. Ethan tried to focus, to understand what she was doing, but he felt a strange dizziness. He watched as she adjusted settings, touched panels, and spoke again in that musical language. Ethan realized he had underestimated this creature. She was not just beautiful, she was intelligent, capable, and focused. She had saved him, and in that act, she had revealed something he had almost forgotten about humans, the instinct to survive and to help, even when the odds were impossible.
Yet there was no sign of fear or doubt in her eyes.
She simply did what was necessary. Hours passed, and Ethan began to regain his strength. He asked her questions, but her replies were in her strange, flowing language. Still, he felt her patience. She didn't rush him, didn't seem annoyed by his questions. Instead, she showed him images in the air, holographic symbols that shifted and changed with her movements. He began to understand some patterns, recognizing basic concepts like energy flows and medical data. Curiosity stirred in him. He had spent years exploring planets, studying rocks and mining resources, but he had never encountered life like this. Her existence challenged everything he had believed about the universe. Humans were taught that advanced life might exist, but he had never truly expected it. Now, the reality was before him, tangible, alive, and caring. As he recovered, Ethan noticed the ship moving through the air, gliding above the dunes without a sound. It moved like a living creature, almost breathing, almost aware. He asked about the planet, the storms, and the distant colony. Again, she responded in her language, but she allowed him to follow her to the observation deck, where he could see the desert stretching endlessly below. He realized the storm clouds were shifting, the winds calming, as the ship hovered above. The alien woman had guided him to safety, not just physically, but strategically. Her species had a way of interacting with the environment that humans could barely comprehend. They didn't just live on planets, they moved with them, understood them, and used their knowledge to protect others. Ethan felt a spark of admiration. Humanity had achieved a lot, but compared to this, humans were fragile. Yet, he also felt something else. A quiet pride. If he could survive in the desert for days, adapt to danger, and maintain hope despite the odds, maybe humans were not so weak after all. Perhaps there was something valuable in their resilience, in their ability to endure and keep moving forward even when the universe seemed indifferent. He began to share small things about humans, stories of exploration, inventions, and moments of courage. She listened, or at least appeared to, tilting her head, scanning the data he provided. Ethan noticed that her eyes sometimes softened, reflecting something like curiosity, perhaps even admiration. He realized that she was not only observing him, but learning from him, and maybe, in some way, appreciating humanity for what it could be. Night fell over the desert, and Ethan watched the stars through the ship's transparent hull. He thought about his home planet, the colony, his family, and friends. For the first time, he felt connected to something larger than himself, not just his own survival, but the vast possibilities of the universe. He understood that encountering this alien woman had changed something inside him. He was no longer just a lone explorer. He was a participant in a story that spanned the stars. The alien woman sat nearby, silent but attentive. Ethan felt a strange sense of companionship, a bond that did not rely on words. She had saved his life, yet in doing so, she had also opened a door. He realized he was not just surviving, he was learning, growing, and beginning to understand the value of connection across species, across worlds. As he drifted into a restless sleep, he wondered what her species might think of humans. Were they primitive? Fragile? Worth saving? Somehow, he felt she had seen something more. Something in humanity's persistence, its curiosity, its courage. And in that realization, Ethan felt hope. The desert winds howled outside, but inside the ship, there was calm. The alien woman moved softly, tending to the instruments, checking on him without interrupting his rest. Ethan felt a surge of gratitude, not just for being alive, but for the chance to witness something extraordinary. Life in the universe was no longer just human. It was vast, interconnected, and full of surprises. When he woke again, he found the alien woman studying him with the same calm, watchful presence. She gestured toward the console, and Ethan understood that she had brought him here for more than rescue. She wanted him to learn, to observe, and perhaps unknowingly to teach her something as well. Ethan stood, testing his strength, and realized he had not just survived the desert, he had survived an encounter that could change the course of his life forever. He looked at her, and for the first time he tried to communicate fully. "Thank you," he said simply, feeling the weight of the words. Her response was a soft smile, a tilt of her head, and a gesture that seemed to acknowledge more than gratitude. It acknowledged respect, trust, and the beginning of something new. Ethan knew then that he had been given more than a second chance at life. He had been given a glimpse of the extraordinary, a reminder that humans, though fragile, had the capacity to touch the stars, not just with technology, but with courage, heart, and curiosity. The desert outside seemed less threatening now. The vast empty landscape no longer felt lonely. Somewhere among the dunes, under alien eyes and unfamiliar skies, humanity had found an unexpected ally. And for the first time in days, Ethan smiled. He realized that this encounter was only the beginning of something much greater, something that could change everything he had ever known about life, the universe, and what it meant to survive. And as the ship lifted silently into the sky, carrying him away from the desert and toward the unknown, Ethan felt a quiet certainty. He was no longer alone. Ethan awoke to the soft hum of the ship's engines, a sound that was both strange and comforting. The alien woman, Lyra, as he had finally learned to think of her, was nearby, her luminous eyes scanning displays and floating holograms. The way she moved through the cabin was effortless, like a bird gliding through the sky. Ethan tried to stand, testing his strength. He no longer felt the sharp exhaustion that had gripped him in the desert. His body was healing faster than he had thought possible, and he realized that her species must have some remarkable medical technology. Lyra glanced at him and tilted her head, emitting a low, melodic sound. Ethan understood a single word: stable. It was all she said, yet it carried meaning far beyond her language. She gestured for him to remain seated while she continued her work, then moved closer and placed a hand on his arm. The touch was gentle but firm, and he felt a strange warmth radiate from her. She was examining him again, but there was more than just analysis in her actions. There was curiosity, concern, and something he could not yet define. Days passed, and Ethan found himself observing her more than she observed him. She rarely spoke in ways he could understand, but she communicated through gestures, holographic projections, and careful attention. One day, while he was watching, Lyra paused and touched her midsection. She looked surprised, almost shocked, and then studied a glowing display hovering in front of her. Ethan felt a wave of concern.
"What is it?"
he asked, his voice cautious. Lyra turned to him, her eyes wide but calm, and repeated the gesture. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. Something had changed inside her. Something unexpected. Over the next hours, she ran continuous scans, and Ethan realized she was pregnant. The realization hit him hard. He had saved by her hands, but now she was carrying a life that was neither fully human nor fully alien. His mind raced. Was it dangerous? Could she survive it? Could the child survive? His curiosity collided with worry, and he could not stop the questions from flooding his mind. Lyra sensed his concern. She laid a hand gently over his, as if to reassure him, and emitted a series of soft, melodic tones. The meaning was unclear, but the emotion was not. She was cautious, but she was also curious and thoughtful. Ethan realized then that this pregnancy was not just a biological event, it was a puzzle, a mystery that neither of them fully understood. In the following days, the ship became both home and laboratory. Lyra shared more of her knowledge, allowing Ethan to witness things he had only imagined. Holographic simulations of her planet, her species' cities, and their advanced technology filled the cabin. She moved through them effortlessly, explaining through gestures and symbols. Ethan watched in awe, feeling the limits of human understanding stretch. Humanity had reached the stars in technology, yes, but nothing he had ever seen compared to the sophistication of her world. Yet for all her intelligence, Lyra's focus on the pregnancy made her movements cautious. She altered her routines, moved more slowly, and sometimes sat quietly, studying the displays with a depth of concentration that surprised Ethan. He realized that for her species, reproduction might be different, more controlled, more predictable. This anomaly, this pregnancy with a human, was unprecedented, and yet she was calm, analytical, and patient. She did not panic, and that steadiness gave Ethan a sense of hope. Curiosity drove him to learn more about the biology of both species. He asked questions, pointing to holograms and diagrams, trying to make sense of how two vastly different beings could produce life together. Lyra watched, her eyes reflecting something he had never seen before: wonder. She had studied countless species, observed many worlds, but something about humanity, about him, had sparked a fascination she could not suppress. Ethan felt proud, even in the midst of uncertainty. Humans were fragile, yes, but they were also remarkable in ways that even advanced species could admire. One evening, as they floated above a shimmering cloud layer of an uncharted planet, Ethan noticed Lyra resting. Her hands hovered over her abdomen, and for the first time she seemed uncertain. Ethan moved closer, speaking softly. "Are you... okay?" he asked. She looked at him, and though he could not understand her words, he felt a connection through her expression. She was not afraid, but she was thinking, calculating, trying to understand this new life inside her. Ethan realized that this child would not just be theirs, it would be a symbol of what was possible when different worlds met. If it survived, if they succeeded, it could change the way her people thought about humanity forever. He felt the weight of responsibility, yet also a spark of pride. Humanity had survived deserts, storms, wars, and isolation. Now, it had a chance to survive in the stars in ways no one had imagined. Lyra began teaching him more about her species' way of life. They didn't just survive, they thrived in harmony, using technology, intelligence, and cooperation. Every aspect of their society was designed to sustain life, to understand ecosystems, planets, and civilizations. Ethan listened, fascinated, comparing it to humanity's improvisation, resilience, and creativity. Humans adapted, sometimes clumsily, sometimes brilliantly, but always with determination. In many ways, he realized, that was what she must admire. As days turned into weeks, the pregnancy progressed. Lyra changed subtly. Her movements became more deliberate, and she spent long hours in contemplation, studying the scans, the projected data, and even the simplest things about Ethan himself. She seemed to understand humans more deeply than anyone he had ever met. He wondered if she was beginning to care, not just about the child, but about humanity, about life beyond her own species. Ethan found himself sharing stories about humans, about exploration, survival, inventions, and even failures. He spoke of moments when humans had seemed hopeless yet found solutions, when ordinary people had done extraordinary things. Lyra listened, absorbing every word, her eyes reflecting patterns of thought he could not decipher. Still, he could feel her growing admiration. It was subtle, quiet, but undeniable. One night he awoke to find her sitting beside him, her glowing eyes dimmed to a soft, soothing light. She reached out and touched his hand. He felt her warmth, her attention, and something more, a sense of partnership. They were alone in the vastness of space, two beings from completely different worlds, yet they were connected by the threads of survival, curiosity, and perhaps even destiny. "Will the child survive?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling slightly. Lyra's eyes met his, and she placed a hand on his chest, then on her abdomen. The gesture was clear. She believed in the life inside her. She was uncertain, yes, but she was also willing to protect it, nurture it, and understand it. Ethan realized then that humans and aliens alike shared a common drive, the desire to protect life, to endure and to discover meaning in existence. Weeks passed, and the bond between them deepened. Ethan no longer felt like a helpless human, saved by an alien. He felt like a partner, a companion, someone contributing to an experiment, or perhaps a miracle that neither of them fully understood. He helped monitor the ship, assisted with scans, and tried to make sense of the alien technology around him. In doing so, he discovered something remarkable. Humans could adapt quickly, even to the most alien environments. Their resilience was not just survival, it was creativity, problem-solving, and determination. Lyra began to smile in her way at his discoveries. She seemed pleased when he understood something, laughed softly at his mistakes, and even allowed him to interact with the ship's systems. Ethan realized that her admiration for humans was growing, not just for their physical abilities, but for their minds, their hearts, and their spirit. Then, one day, as they passed through a nebula of glowing gas clouds, the ship's sensors detected an anomaly. A small, unstable planet drifted nearby, its atmosphere turbulent and dangerous. Lyra's attention shifted immediately, and she gestured for Ethan to come closer. Together they studied the planet, her projections revealing patterns and dangers. Ethan offered a suggestion, a simple human idea based on logic and instinct rather than calculation. To his surprise, she paused, considered it, and then adjusted her approach accordingly. The idea worked. Ethan felt a thrill of pride. For the first time, he realized that humans could teach aliens something. Not just survive, but influence, adapt, and solve problems in ways they could not. Lyra's eyes lingered on him longer than usual, and he sensed respect, curiosity, and something more profound, a recognition that humans had value beyond their fragility. As night fell across the nebula, Ethan reflected on the journey so far. He had been saved by an alien, carried across space, and now he was helping her navigate challenges while she carried a life that was a miracle in itself. Humanity, he realized, was not just surviving. It was learning, teaching, and inspiring, even in the face of unimaginable odds. Lyra sat beside him, her glowing eyes dimmed to a soft light, and Ethan reached out. Their hands met, and for the first time, words were not necessary. The connection was complete. They shared understanding, curiosity, and hope. Somewhere in the universe, two very different species had begun a journey together, one that would change both of their lives forever. And in that quiet moment, Ethan understood something he had never known before. Life, in all its forms, was more powerful than fear, more enduring than despair, and more extraordinary than anyone could predict. Humanity's journey among the stars was only beginning, and he was a part of it, alive, inspired, and ready for whatever came next. The ship descended through the colorful clouds of Lyra's home planet, a world unlike anything Ethan had ever imagined. Towering crystalline cities stretched across continents, their surfaces shimmering with light that seemed alive. The air was thick with energy, and the sky pulsed with colors he had no names for. From the outside, the planet seemed peaceful, even beautiful, but Ethan could sense an undercurrent of strict order, rules that guided every movement, every decision of its inhabitants. Lyra's ship landed smoothly in a grand docking bay that hovered above a sea of flowing structures. As they exited, Ethan felt the weight of countless eyes upon him. Her people watched with curiosity, suspicion, and, he realized with a start, disdain. They moved with precision, their expressions sharp, and their bodies perfectly aligned with the order of their society. For a moment, Ethan felt small, weak, and painfully human. Lyra's steps were calm but purposeful. She moved forward, ignoring the whispers and questioning glances. Ethan followed, trying to remain composed, though every part of him screamed that they were being judged. He had survived deserts, storms, and the unknown reaches of space, but nothing prepared him for the scrutiny of this alien civilization. At the central plaza, a group of Lyra's elders awaited them. Their forms were taller, more refined, and their eyes radiated authority. They regarded Ethan with skepticism. He could feel their silent questions. Why is this human here? Why did you bring him?
What danger does he pose to our order?
Lyra stood before them, her posture firm, her glowing eyes meeting theirs without fear. She placed her hands over her abdomen, an unspoken declaration. The child she carried was visible in the soft luminescence that pulsed from her body, a sign that could not be ignored. Ethan watched as murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some stepped back, alarmed. Others leaned forward, intrigued but cautious. An elder spoke first, the language alien and musical, sharp with authority. Lyra responded, her voice steady and controlled. Ethan could not understand the words, but the tone was calm, firm, and respectful. It was clear she was explaining, defending, and negotiating all at once. The elders seemed taken aback. They had never seen this before. A hybrid pregnancy, a violation of their carefully maintained rules. For hours they debated. Ethan could only watch, feeling helpless yet fascinated. He saw the alien culture's strength, their logic, discipline, and precision. They prized knowledge, order, and predictability above all else. A human child, unplanned and unpredictable, challenged everything they believed. And yet, he could also see a few open minds among them, eyes softening at Lyra's calm confidence and at the strange human beside her. During a break, Ethan stepped forward cautiously. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," he said in his own language, though he knew few understood. Lyra touched his arm gently, her eyes conveying reassurance. Somehow he understood that she trusted him to stay calm, to remain respectful. He realized then that humanity had something her society valued, even if they did not yet recognize it: restraint, patience, and the ability to adapt in situations far beyond comprehension. The days passed in tense negotiation. Ethan learned more about Lyra's people by observation. They were brilliant, capable of manipulating energy, creating complex structures, and communicating through thought as much as language. Yet for all their intelligence, they lacked something humans possessed: intuition, improvisation, and a deep understanding of emotion. Humans acted not only on logic, but also on instinct and courage. They could succeed where plans failed because they could see possibilities beyond calculations. Lyra gradually began to demonstrate these human qualities through Ethan's influence. When the elders debated methods for stabilizing a minor energy anomaly, she allowed Ethan to suggest a simple human approach: trial and observation rather than calculated certainty. At first, the elders balked, but when the plan succeeded, a few of them shifted their stance. Quietly, they began to acknowledge that humans, while fragile, had creativity and resourcefulness worth considering.
Ethan felt a surge of pride.
He had never expected his survival skills, his instincts, and his persistence to mean so much to a species so advanced. Yet here he was, not just alive, but respected for human traits he had always taken for granted. Humanity had a voice, even among beings who had mastered space and technology. Lyra's pregnancy continued to progress, and she moved with more care. Ethan watched her closely, offering help where he could. Simple tasks, like adjusting navigation panels or monitoring environmental readings, became moments of connection. Though words were rare, they communicated through shared effort, understanding, and trust. Ethan realized that the child was more than a life growing inside her. It was a symbol, a bridge between two civilizations that had never truly met before. One afternoon, while they observed the city from a floating terrace, an elder approached Ethan. For the first time, one of Lyra's people spoke directly to him in haltingly translated words. Human, observe, adapt. The meaning was unclear, but the tone was cautious, curious. Ethan nodded, offering a small explanation of how humans survived extreme conditions, adapted to challenges, and solved problems unpredictably. The elder listened, absorbing his words slowly, as if discovering a new concept entirely. Lyra's eyes glimmered with pride. She had brought Ethan here not just for herself or the child, but for her people to see what humans could offer. It was subtle, but he could feel the significance. Humanity's value was not in brute strength or speed, but in resilience, creativity, and the willingness to act despite uncertainty. The elders began to recognize that there was more to humans than the fragile form they had assumed. Tensions remained high, however. Some of the council members viewed Ethan as a threat, a contaminant of order. The hybrid child represented unpredictability, a variable their society was not prepared to accept. Lyra faced pressure from all sides. She remained calm, analytical, yet determined. She argued with logic and passion, showing that the human's presence had not caused harm. Slowly, the council began to see that the unexpected could also lead to innovation and growth. Ethan, in the meantime, learned about Lyra's people's perspective. They valued perfection, precision, and knowledge, often above emotional bonds. To them, a human's mistakes, feelings, and impulsive actions seemed chaotic. Yet, as he demonstrated problem-solving, adaptability, and emotional intelligence, a subtle shift occurred. The elders could not deny that humans, though imperfect, had qualities that even their advanced society lacked. One evening, Lyra and Ethan stood on a balcony overlooking the city's energy streams. She rested her hand on her abdomen, and Ethan placed his hand over hers. They were silent, yet communication flowed through presence alone. The child they carried was no longer just a biological anomaly. It represented potential, change, and a merging of two worlds. "Your people will understand eventually," Ethan said softly. He had no way of knowing if she understood the words fully, but she turned to him, eyes reflecting the energy of the city and something deeper, hope. Lyra emitted a soft, melodic tone, one that seemed almost like laughter. For Ethan, it was enough. They had survived the desert, the void of space, and the judgment of an alien civilization. Now they faced a new challenge: acceptance. Over the following weeks, Lyra and Ethan worked together to demonstrate humanity's value. They solved problems using combined approaches, her analytical precision and his intuitive human creativity. Each success, small or large, began to erode skepticism. The elders who had once doubted Ethan's presence now observed quietly, noting the effectiveness of his methods. Humanity's ingenuity, born of necessity and resilience, was earning respect. Lyra's glow, signaling the pregnancy, became a constant reminder of what was at stake. She moved carefully, monitored her own health, and involved Ethan in decision-making. Together they became a team, blending two cultures in ways neither had fully anticipated. Ethan realized that humans could thrive not by changing themselves entirely, but by embracing their unique strengths: the courage to act, the ability to adapt, and the empathy to connect. One day, a council debate reached a critical point. The elders questioned whether allowing the human to stay posed a risk to the species. Lyra stood firm, her hands glowing with subtle light. She argued not just for the child, but for humanity itself, demonstrating through evidence, examples, and intuition that humans could be partners, not threats. Ethan stepped forward and added his perspective, carefully showing how humans had survived in extreme environments, solved impossible problems, and contributed to new knowledge. The council was silent, considering his words. Slowly, a few elders nodded. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. The alien civilization that had once dismissed humanity as fragile began to see the value of adaptability, courage, and creativity. Ethan felt a quiet pride. Humans had not only survived, they were beginning to earn respect across the stars.
As night fell over the glowing city, Ethan and Lyra returned to a quiet chamber.
She rested, her hand over her abdomen, and he watched with awe. He understood now that their journey was only beginning. The challenges were not over. The council's full acceptance was uncertain, and the hybrid child's future remained unknown. Yet in that moment, they had achieved something remarkable. They had begun to bridge two worlds, two species, and two ways of seeing the universe. Ethan reached out, placing his hand over hers again. Lyra's eyes met his, glowing softly, and he felt the unspoken promise of partnership. Humanity's resilience, courage, and adaptability had not only saved him, they had captured the attention of an entire civilization. And in that realization, he felt hope for the future, for the child, and for the extraordinary possibilities that lay ahead. The night stretched on, filled with the soft hum of the city and the quiet rhythm of life in the chamber. Ethan knew that the desert he had survived seemed small now, compared to the vast challenges and wonders of this world. Humanity had proven its worth, even in the eyes of a species that valued perfection. And for the first time, he felt a true sense of belonging, not just as a human, but as a partner in something larger, something extraordinary. Lyra's hand squeezed his lightly, and he understood. The child, the bond, and the trust between them were more than survival. They were the beginning of a new chapter, not just for humanity, but for the universe itself. The city above Lyra's planet gleamed like a jewel under the twin suns. Ethan walked beside her, marveling at the towering structures made of translucent materials that shimmered with energy. Every movement of the inhabitants seemed precise, orchestrated, and purposeful. Yet beneath the calm and perfection, tension was rising. The city's energy grids had begun to fluctuate, and the elders grew anxious. Lyra sensed it first. Her luminous eyes scanned the displays in the central plaza, tracking irregular patterns in the city's energy streams. Small tremors of instability rippled through the floating towers, and alarms flashed softly in the peripheral of Ethan's vision. "Something is happening," she said, though her words were barely human. Ethan caught the urgency in her tone. The elders convened immediately, their expressions sharp and controlled. They spoke in rapid sequences, analyzing data with precision. Ethan could see the logic in their calculations, but he also noticed a limitation. Their society relied heavily on predictability and pre-programmed solutions. When faced with something unexpected, they hesitated. A storm of energy was approaching, a massive, unpredictable pulse from the planet's core. It could disrupt the floating city, damage the delicate structures, and endanger countless lives. Lyra turned to Ethan. "I need your help," she said. The words were clear, and Ethan's heart raced. He had survived deserts, storms, and the void of space. But now he faced a crisis on a planet more advanced than anything he had ever known. Yet he did not hesitate.
"Tell me what to do," he said. She explained the problem as best as she could, showing him the energy flows and structural weak points through holographic projections.
The elders debated, but every suggestion they offered relied on perfect calculation and precise execution. Ethan realized that human intuition and improvisation could be valuable here. Where they hesitated, humans might act, experiment, and adapt in real time.
"Let's try this," Ethan said, pointing to a section of the projection. "If we redirect the energy through multiple channels, even if some fail, we can stabilize the city temporarily." Lyra's eyes widened slightly. The plan was unconventional for her species. It was messy, uncertain, and not guaranteed to succeed. But it had potential. She nodded. Together, they began coordinating the effort. Ethan suggested simple, human-inspired adjustments, rerouting minor energy flows, adjusting the timing of the city's shields, and using auxiliary systems in ways the elders had not considered. Lyra implemented his ideas, modifying them with her precision to ensure safety. The combination of human intuition and alien expertise created a new strategy neither could achieve alone. As the energy storm approached, alarms blared across the city. Ethan felt the ground vibrate beneath him as floating towers adjusted to maintain balance. Myra moved swiftly, guiding technicians and interfacing with the city's systems. Ethan followed, his hands working panels and adjusting controls according to instinct. Each small decision could mean the difference between stability and collapse. The storm hit with a roar that shook the city, sending waves of energy through the network. Lights flickered, and some towers swayed precariously. Yet the plan worked. The energy flowed through the multiple channels Ethan had suggested, preventing a catastrophic surge. Sparks flew, panels glowed brightly, and the city groaned under the strain. But it held. The elders watched in astonishment. Many had doubted that a human could contribute meaningfully, but the proof was undeniable. Ethan's improvisation, paired with Lyra's precision, had saved the city. Murmurs of admiration spread through the council. A few of the more open-minded elders nodded to each other, realizing that humans, though imperfect and fragile in form, had qualities worth recognizing. Lyra glanced at Ethan, her eyes glowing softly. She placed a hand over his, a gesture of gratitude and connection. The child she carried stirred, a subtle reminder that this crisis was not just a challenge for the city, but for their growing bond and the life that represented the future of two worlds. In the aftermath, Ethan walked through the city streets with Lyra. Citizens paused to observe him, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and respect. He realized that humanity had earned recognition here, not through strength, technology, or domination, but through resilience, courage, and creativity. They had survived,
adapted, and contributed in ways that even a civilization as advanced as Lyra's could appreciate. Lyra led him to a quiet terrace overlooking the city. The energy storm had passed, leaving trails of glowing light in the atmosphere. Ethan marveled at the beauty, thinking of how fragile human life had seemed in the desert and how incredible it was to now play a part in saving an entire alien city.
"You did well," Lyra said, her melodic voice soft and genuine. Ethan smiled, feeling a surge of pride.
"We did it together," he replied. It was not just a personal victory. It was a testament to what humans could offer when courage and ingenuity were combined with trust and collaboration. The next days were spent repairing minor damage and stabilizing the city's energy systems. Ethan and Lyra worked closely, their bond deepening with every shared task. She explained more about her species' technology, and he shared human strategies for improvisation and problem-solving. They learned from each other, blending intuition with precision, creativity with logic. Even the council began to change. Elders who had doubted the humans' worth now observed with quiet respect. They saw not just Ethan's courage, but humanity's potential, a species capable of learning, adapting, and inspiring. The hybrid child Lyra carried became a symbol, not of fear or unpredictability, but of possibility and hope. One evening, Ethan stood on the balcony of Lyra's private chamber, looking at the glowing city below. The twins' suns were setting, casting long shadows across the crystalline towers. He reflected on the journey so far, saved from the desert, carried through space, confronted with alien judgment, and now a contributor to the survival of an entire civilization. Humanity had proven its worth, not through force, but through persistence, creativity, and empathy. Lyra approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. She touched her abdomen lightly, and Ethan felt the gentle movement of life inside her. He smiled, realizing that the child represented something far greater than either of them. A bridge between species, a promise of unity, and a reminder that courage and curiosity could overcome even the strictest rules.
They spoke little, but their silence was filled with understanding.
Words were unnecessary. Their actions and shared experiences conveyed everything. The child stirred again, and Ethan felt a sense of awe. Humanity had survived deserts, storms, and isolation. Now it had helped save a city on a distant world, and it had done so not through domination, but through intelligence, adaptability, and heart. Over the following weeks, Ethan and Lyra trained a group of young citizens in human problem-solving techniques. They demonstrated how to combine intuition with data, how to improvise when conditions changed, and how courage and empathy could influence decisions. The lessons were small, but meaningful, and the students responded with curiosity and excitement. Even the most skeptical elders began to recognize that humanity had gifts worth honoring. One day, while adjusting a complex energy node, Ethan paused and looked at Lyra.
"Your people..."
"They're beginning to see us differently," he said softly. She nodded, her eyes glowing warmly.
The storm, the hybrid pregnancy, and the combined effort had begun to shift perceptions. Humans were no longer just fragile beings. They were partners, innovators, and a symbol of hope. The city flourished as a result. Energy flows stabilized, minor repairs were completed, and life resumed its rhythm. Ethan walked the streets with Lyra, observing citizens going about their day. Children played with small, glowing drones. Elders discussed strategies with a newfound openness, and the city itself seemed more vibrant, more alive. Humanity's contribution had left a mark, a reminder that courage, creativity, and empathy could transcend species and worlds. That night, Lyra and Ethan returned to her private chamber. She rested, her hands gently cradling her abdomen. Ethan sat beside her, marveling at the life growing within. The child was a symbol of everything they had accomplished: survival, partnership, and the bridging of two civilizations. He realized that humans were more than explorers, more than survivors. They were a force of inspiration, capable of influencing the galaxy in ways even the most advanced species could not predict.
Lyra reached out, and Ethan took her hand.
Together, they watched the city glow beneath the twin suns, knowing that their journey was far from over. The energy storm had tested them, forced them to adapt, and proven humanity's worth. But it had also reminded them of something deeper. Courage, ingenuity, and compassion were universal strengths, capable of changing the course of worlds. And as they sat together watching the light ripple across the city, Ethan understood that humanity's story among the stars had only just begun. They had survived deserts, storms, and alien judgment, and they had done so not by brute strength, but by heart, mind, and spirit. And now, with Lyra and the child they carried, they were ready to shape the future, together. The soft glow of dawn lit the crystalline towers of Lyra's city, painting the streets in hues Ethan had no words for. The twin suns rose slowly, casting long, shimmering patterns across the floating pathways. Ethan walked beside Lyra, her hand resting gently over her abdomen. The child within had grown, moving in subtle waves, a quiet reminder of everything they had survived together. The city was calm now, fully restored after the energy storm, but the anticipation of what was to come filled the air. Lyra's people had come to accept Ethan in their presence. The elders who had once regarded him with skepticism and caution now watched quietly, their expressions softened by curiosity and respect. The hybrid child was no longer seen as a threat or anomaly. It had become a symbol of possibility, a bridge between human intuition and alien precision. Every citizen who passed by gazed at Ethan and Lyra with quiet admiration, acknowledging the courage, adaptability, and partnership that had saved the city. The labor began quietly. Lyra moved to a special chamber designed for births, her glowing eyes focused but calm. Ethan stood nearby, holding her hand, feeling the life within her stir more urgently. He marveled at her strength. Despite the pregnancy's unprecedented nature, Lyra moved with grace, her species' discipline guiding her every step. Yet, he also sensed the vulnerability, the unpredictability of human life intertwined with alien biology. The moment was as beautiful as it was profound. The elders gathered at the edges of the chamber, silent witnesses.
They had long debated the child's place in their society, but now, seeing the care, dedication, and partnership between Ethan and Lyra, even the most skeptical of them softened.
They had watched humans survive against impossible odds, and now they would witness the creation of something extraordinary, a new life that could embody the strengths of both species. Hours passed. Ethan stayed by Lyra's side, guiding her when necessary, offering words of encouragement, even though he knew she did not rely on them. Their connection transcended words. He could feel her determination, her focus, and the life growing inside her. This was a moment that would define both their worlds, and he understood the weight of it. Humanity's role in this galaxy was no longer a question. It was a promise. Finally, the first cries echoed softly in the chamber. Ethan felt tears well in his eyes as he watched Lyra cradle the child. The small being shimmered faintly, a blend of human warmth and alien luminescence. Its eyes opened briefly, reflecting intelligence far beyond its size, and Ethan felt an overwhelming sense of awe.
The child was a symbol of unity, courage, and hope.
Humanity, once dismissed as fragile, had now left an indelible mark on a civilization far beyond Earth. Lyra smiled softly at him, a gesture filled with relief, pride, and love. The child, whom she named Nova, cooed quietly, radiating light in gentle pulses. Ethan leaned closer, brushing a hand over Nova's delicate form. He marveled at the combination of human features and alien grace. In that moment, he understood something profound. Humanity's strength was not just in survival or technology, but in connection, empathy, and courage. Humans had reached the stars not merely by building ships, but by touching lives, inspiring hope, and daring to act even when the outcome was uncertain. The elders approached slowly, Their expressions were unreadable at first, but as they observed Nova, their postures softened. They spoke among themselves in low, musical tones, analyzing the child's existence. Ethan realized that for the first time, his species had earned the recognition of a civilization that valued logic, precision, and knowledge above all else. Humanity was no longer merely observed, it was respected. One of the senior elders stepped forward, placing a hand gently over the edge of the cradle. There was a pause, then a soft gesture of approval. Ethan felt a surge of pride. Humanity had not simply survived, it had contributed to life in the galaxy, bridging cultures and demonstrating the value of intuition, courage, and creativity. Lyra rested for a moment, holding Nova close. Ethan stayed beside her, marveling at how the child's presence seemed to radiate hope. He realized that Nova's life was not just their own. It was a promise to the galaxy that two species, so different in form and culture, could coexist and thrive together. Humans had proven that even the smallest, most fragile beings could change the course of worlds. The following days were filled with quiet learning and observation. Ethan watched as Nova grew rapidly, displaying intelligence, curiosity, and energy that seemed to blend human spontaneity with alien precision. Lyra taught him about the child's physiology and how to care for a hybrid species, explaining subtle adjustments to environment, nutrition, and stimulation. Every lesson deepened Ethan's respect for her knowledge and care. Citizens came to visit, many cautiously at first, but their curiosity quickly gave way to fascination. They watched as Ethan interacted with Nova, playing gently, observing responses, and demonstrating patience and empathy. The human's ability to connect emotionally, to adapt and respond intuitively, amazed even the most analytical observers. They began to see that human qualities, imperfect, unpredictable, and fragile, could complement their own structured existence in profound ways. Lyra's influence on her people grew alongside the child's development. She spoke to the council, demonstrating how human creativity and courage could enhance their society, not threaten it. Ethan assisted, showing examples of human problem-solving and intuition. Slowly, minds that had once dismissed humanity began to open. Respect replaced skepticism. Curiosity replaced judgment. Humanity, once seen as fragile, was now recognized as innovative, adaptable, and inspiring. The final ceremony took place in the central plaza, beneath towering crystalline spires that glimmered with energy. Citizens and elders gathered to witness the acknowledgement of Nova, the hybrid child who embodied the union of two worlds. Lyra carried Nova forward, Ethan by her side. The council spoke, their voices resonant with approval, their expressions softened by admiration. Humanity's role among the stars had been officially recognized. Ethan looked around, absorbing the significance. The city shimmered in response to the ceremony, lights pulsing gently across towers and streets. Humans had arrived not through force, conquest, or domination, but through courage, creativity, and the willingness to act despite uncertainty. Humanity had touched a civilization far older and more advanced than itself, and had been accepted as a partner, not an outsider. Lyra set Nova down gently, and the child's eyes opened, reflecting both human warmth and alien intelligence. Citizens stepped closer, marveling at the miracle. Ethan reached out, holding Nova's small hand, and felt an incredible surge of pride. Humanity had not just survived, it had inspired. In private moments afterward, Lyra and Ethan walked through the city terraces, hand in hand. The glow of the twin suns reflected on the crystalline structures, and Ethan realized the journey had transformed him completely. He had begun as a stranded explorer, saved by an alien stranger, and now stood recognized by a civilization he could scarcely have imagined. Humanity's resilience, courage, and ingenuity had earned a place among the stars. Lyra spoke softly, her melodic tones filled with warmth. "We did it!" she said. Ethan nodded, understanding more than the words themselves. They had created life, bridged cultures, and shown that even the most fragile species could have profound impact on the universe. Nova stirred in her arms, a living testament to their journey. The elders approached once more, bowing subtly in recognition. Their expressions reflected a newfound respect for humans, not as fragile beings, but as collaborators and innovators. Ethan felt a sense of accomplishment beyond words. Humanity had survived deserts, storms, and judgment. Now it had inspired, contributed, and earned a permanent place in the galaxy. As the suns rose higher, Ethan looked at the skyline and realized that this was only the beginning. Humanity had proven itself capable of surviving, adapting, and thriving, but more importantly, it had shown that courage, creativity, and empathy could transcend species, cultures, and worlds. He glanced at Lyra, and together they watched Nova, understanding that the child represented the future, a future where humans were not just survivors, but pioneers, partners, and symbols of hope. The city hummed with life, and Ethan felt a quiet certainty. Humans had touched the stars, and their journey was only beginning. With Lyra by his side and Nova in their care, he knew that humanity's story among the stars would be one of courage, inspiration, and wonder. Ethan smiled, taking a deep breath of the alien air. Humanity had arrived, not as conquerors, not as invaders, but as a species capable of heart, intelligence, and unyielding spirit. And in that moment, he understood that the universe was full of possibilities, and humans had proven themselves worthy to explore them. Lyra squeezed his hand, and Ethan looked at her, his heart full. Together they would guide Nova, nurture hope, and continue to show the galaxy what it meant to be human. Humanity had survived countless challenges, and now it had the chance to inspire civilizations across the stars. The adventure was far from over, but for the first time, Ethan knew that whatever came next, humanity had earned its place among the stars. Nova stirred again, small arms reaching outward, a reminder that life, courage, and hope could grow even in the most unexpected places. Ethan laughed softly, and Lyra's melodic tone responded in kind. They had survived, they had grown, and they had created a future where humans and aliens could coexist in wonder and mutual respect. As the twin suns bathed the city in golden light, Ethan realized something simple, profound, and powerful. Humanity was not just fragile or weak. Humans were resilient, courageous, creative, and capable of touching the universe in ways that no one had expected. They had arrived, not merely to survive, but to inspire. And so, the child, the city, and the people stood together, a living testament to the power of courage, compassion, and hope. Humanity's journey among the stars had only just begun, and the universe would never be the same again.